Hi, I'm Andre Roux, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I'm a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. Data-driven TV is starting to get its mojo on. It's come a long way from just a few years ago when many pioneers like me were busy evangelizing addressable TV. And so was today's guest, who I've had the pleasure of working with on hundreds of addressable TV campaigns. And what was considered pioneer country then is moving forward with exciting opportunities to connect many more data-driven advertising capabilities for brands. Even more, though, is to consider that the currency of measurement in a world where billions of dollars of advertising occurs is changing. Andre Roux is a data sales executive at Experian and has an extensive background in the TV industry, working in data, operations, analytics, and sales for companies like Experian, NBCU, DIRECTV, Turner, and ABC Disney. And on this episode, we'll discuss data-driven marketing and advertising, addressable TV, connected TV, the convergence of TV and digital marketing, myths about that convergence, measurement, reach, frequency, looking at TV from various perspectives, how data plays a role with agencies buying data companies, GRPs, MRCs, swimming with sharks on your honeymoon, types of French cuisine, who wins a huge wrestling match, and a lot more. So let's tune into two addressable TV pioneers, Andre and yours truly, Mr. Shark, on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Andre, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. We just met. We've never worked together, or you've never yelled at me for anything. But would you give us a brief overview of your background and your career to date?
Never yelled at you. Maybe
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah, not this week. Years ago, yes.
Yeah. So I originally started in spot television about 2 decades ago. From there, moved on to ABC, where I got introduced not only to their local owned and operated networks, but also the online side of the business as it was starting to grow for them. So I did a lot of web analytics for them. Moved over to ABC Family, where again very deep in web analytics, and then after that went to CNN for a brief stop, and then got involved with the launch of addressable television with DIRECTV. Worked there for about 3 years, and then moved on to NBC Universal, where we launched their data-driven approach and worked with a lot of their data-driven advanced television products.
Well, it seems small world because when you were on the DirecTV side, I was on the big data side. Now here you are on the big data side. So we've come full circle. It gives you
Yes.
a really unique perspective to addressable targeting and TV and so forth. So let's talk a little bit about TV and digital today. It's a great topic. We'll talk about a little bit about the convergence too. You're a well-known person in this industry, especially the TV space. We've known a lot of some superstars in that space as well. Where do you see the convergence of TV and digital marketing today?
Yeah, so I think that TV and digital definitely is starting to come together. Traditionally it's been a blocker that digital has been done differently than how TV is, and TV is currently kind of starting to work their way back or work their way into that means of handling ads and handling data and being able to kind of deliver messaging in appropriate terms. From a perspective of the big picture, we have a lot more data driven linear work happening, and I think that it's important to bring in that data targeting to get past the traditional means of measurement, traditional means of kind of counting and understanding what's happening in the media space. uh, Digital has always been done on impressions, and I think TV is starting to kind of hit that tipping point where they're moving from your Nielsen GRPs and ratings into something that's a little bit more, uh, impression based and data driven to get at that. So.
Well, when you say that, I think to several years ago when we worked as partners on a lot of these campaigns, a lot of the big boys and girls were already doing a convergence. When you say it's starting to come together, Do you feel like it's in the masses, it's starting to come together? Because I know a lot of the great big boys and girls were already testing this heavily because I was a part of
Mhm.
managing those campaigns, but are you seeing it just being more pervasive throughout the industry?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to kind of populate more into the everyday, right?
Yeah,
So
the retail
at some
level.
point in
Yeah.
time, yeah, at some point in time, you had digital being bought by a different shop at a different agency than the TV, and then it turned into this kind of battle about like whose money's going where, right? Now it's kind of like the publishers have gotten to the place where they're putting their content everywhere that they can in order to get people to start watching it and to start consuming it, right? And so as that continues to grow, the means under which you're buying those things is important. Data driven linear, to me at least, is one of those means of kind of getting out there and building scale really quick, and then layering. I use that layer cake approach as to how to kind of get to that next level of getting reach. So it's, you're layering on your addressability, you're layering on your digital, your mobile, your CTV, all that kind of comes together to build your scale. Whether it's reach is your objective or frequency, and I think the two of those kind of go hand in hand. Where you have to have a certain amount of reach, but if you're only reaching people with one ad, that's not as effective, right? So you want to make sure that you're kind of getting that right amount of scale and that right amount of hitting the correct audience, as opposed to just kind of spray and pray approach.
If we think back to just a few years ago, it was, especially in addressable TV, it was really sort of a set top box, mainly conversation. And then as these teams were battling out who was going to do the buying between digital versus TV, it all of a sudden became popular when it was connected TV and, not delivered through a satellite dish and went to an iPad instead. But
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious, what do you think is a myth to you and what is not part of the convergence? Because you were just talking about something before we went on about how much money is still going into a lot of broadcast TV. And there's a lot of people that think that
Yeah.
nothing's being done in traditional broadcast TV, but there's a ton of money that's still going in there.
Yeah.
So there is a decline. But if you read most of the emails out there or a lot of the pieces out there, connected TV would be the only thing in
Right.
existence today. And all the traditional channels would have died off 10 years ago, like the dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started my career, there was that whole. Somebody told me you're selling the sizzle, you're not selling the steak, right? And a lot of CTV right now is big, and it's important, and I think it's expanding. It's a platform that's not kind of ready to compress just quite yet, but I liken back to like the late 90s, where there was all these cable channels popping up, and like there was MTV2 and MTV3 and like VH1 2, and there was this kind of like explosion of content that was available, and then it started to kind of like compress again, right? And so broadcast is still a big chunk of the publishing money that's out there. People tune in to these shows that are still on TV. It's your ABCs, your NBCs, your Foxes, your CBSs, right? So there's a lot of money that's being spent, being made, content that's being consumed. Like people are saying it's going away, but like it's not dying 1 2 3. It's slowly kind of finding its right size. I don't think it's ever going to just disappear, right? And those prevailing platforms that are out there are going to start to kind of take their own place in the world as far as how they deliver content. I honestly have a belief that all of the apps that are out there are going to have to start to come together in one place, because consumers are going to push it there. And there's, if you're paying $3 a month here and $4 a month there and $10 a month here, and then it all of a sudden turns into like, hey, that cable cord that I cut is actually just being redistributed to all these different services, right? So, but I think what's important there is that convergent cell of like ads are going to be supporting some of this stuff, so that way you're not dealing with I'm buying this content on this app for $50. It's going to turn into that like, hey, we'll ad support it, and we'll make it digestible for the end user.
Well, you did forget ESPN,
The Ocho, absolutely.
the Ocho. So you're working for Experian today. How does data play a role in this convergence, especially with third-party data that your team is working with?
Yeah, so I left that out of my intro, but I am currently working with Experian doing data sales for them. And I think it's going to start to proliferate a lot of the not only linear spending, advanced TV spending, which is where it's always been, and then also the digital side of the house. And so with the profile of the person and the data that we were able to collect about you know every household that's out there, I think that ability to kind of do that convergence and go after that target regardless of what platform they're on, regardless of the content that they're consuming, is important because then you're now getting ads in front of people in the right way, um, in the devices that they're consuming information and programming on and content on, and you're doing it in a way that's more relevant. And that's the whole promise of advanced advertising is, we're not sending you ads for stuff that you're not interested in. We're sending you stuff that's relevant, and it makes it all trackable. It makes it all from an advertiser perspective, it makes it more impactful. You get to see that linkage between I bought X amount of impressions and sold Y amount of product. Back in the day when it was like, hey, TV is TV and I bought 18 to 49 and it's going to get me all these impressions. Yes, those impressions were delivered, but the problem is there's no linkage between, like, did they drive you to go and purchase things outside of the kind of hope that it was impactful and people saw the ads and did what it is that you asked them to do. So I think that plays into kind of the currency of the space and how media buying is going to be impacted, as well as how advertisers go about doing their advertising.
Well, let's talk a little bit about measurement, especially for driving performance. And I know we've talked about this before about Nielsen. I was 2 or 3 days ago, I was sitting with somebody that worked at an agency who brought up Nielsen as a standard for them. And I was kind of surprised. It was a small agency, but one that had a healthy number of clients. And I was interested to see how many people still think about measurement with the older forms of measurement that they know at the retail level, but that currency, if you will, as you've described it, is changing. Elaborate, if you will, a little bit on how measurement's changing.
Yeah, from my perspective, being at networks that had a strong basis in how Nielsen ranked them and performed them and all that information. Like, it was kind of the one currency that ruled them all, and it was kind of the thing that was getting the most amount of scrutiny, because again, as I mentioned, there's billions of dollars being spent in broadcast television. And so that changed when Nielsen lost their MRC accreditation. And I think that the sea change was happening well before that. But the thing that you got to be aware of is that agencies have also kind of convinced all of their clients that they need to have X amount of GRPs, and they've kind of fed them this Nielsen, as the end all be all for the longest time. So now we're kind of faced with that. All right, things are starting to change. Information's starting to kind of flow in different directions. That ability to kind of go deeper and get more granular and more refined is starting to proliferate out in the marketplace. And so that dependency on Nielsen is starting to kind of fade away, and other forms of currency are popping up. The big complaint that everybody's had against Nielsen for the longest time is it's all panel based and it's small panel based. And now we're getting to a place where things are coming through in a census, and we're kind of taking digital and we're matching and merging that with some of the TV data that we're getting from set-top boxes or from OTT services, and mixing that all together to come up with that correct media model. It's now changing the face of what it is that campaigns are getting kind of guaranteed on, right? That 18 to 49 is wonderful, but let's see what else is happening for my advertiser, right? So a lot of these agencies have bought data companies. Um, these data companies provide value, and one of the values that they're actually starting to help with is like, all right, find me people who are in the market for a product, and then let's see not only how many GRPs we were able to get, but also how many impressions were delivered to those households that were in the market. So that concept of like a secondary guarantee is starting to play into some of the buys that are out there, and some of the mindsets of how people are seeing that transition from GRPs to actual impressions for a product or for a service.
And just to let listeners know, MRC was the Media Ratings Council. And that happened in 2021, which wasn't that long ago. They lost the accreditation. But I'm curious for you, you've gone from one of the MVPDs now to you work with DIRECTV, you work with NBCU on the programming side, and now you're on the data side. How has your perspective changed with TV and digital that maybe has evolved? Is there anything that you thought you knew with DIRECTV that now you learned on the data side? You're like, oh, I look at this a lot differently.
Not so much looking at it differently, but I think that the advanced TV and the data-driven space is starting to get its mojo on. We were kind of pioneering stuff at DirecTV when it came to and Dish and Comcast. We're all kind of like coming out of the gate saying, hey, we can do this addressable thing. All we need is X, Y, and Z. And so starting to see that at its infancy, come of age is where I'm getting more excited. We used to have to be out there evangelizing the data and evangelizing, the ability and the targeting capabilities and all that stuff. And now it's not so much evangelizing. We actually have clients that are coming to us and they're like, all right, how do we take it to that level? How do we take it to that next level, right? And so again, this is where the convergence is coming in, being able to kind of speak to this stuff not only on the the box on the wall, but the phone in your hand and the CTV device that I have hanging off my receiver, right? Like all of that stuff is now part of the fabric of where we're helping our clients advertise and helping our clients kind of get the right audience and get out there and get in front of it. So that's kind of changed where it's, we used to have to be out there and be like, yeah, going after data-driven campaigns is a big deal. Now it's the advertisers and the agencies are coming to us and they're like, hey, how do we do this better? How do we get across the different devices? So I think
that just means they listen to us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're drinking the Kool-Aid now. Right?
Exactly. Now they are.
They've realized.
Experian's still independent, but a lot of the large agencies bought data companies over the last several years, and that's provided a different set of values for them as well. Elaborate, if you will, a little bit about how you see agencies playing a different part in this mix.
Yeah, so I think the agencies have kind of come on board with that whole concept of 18 to 49 is just a number of an age group and an age bracket that pretty much is like everybody in the country, right? Their clients are actually forcing them to get more succinct with their messaging, succinct with how it is that they go out into the marketplace. A lot of these clients have their own CRMs, their own databases, their own ability to kind of collect information on their customers, and they want to start putting that to use. The agencies now starting to buy data companies, I think, plays into that in the ability to go deeper with not only with their campaigns, but also with their analysis of what's kind of happening, how it is that they're driving sales for their clients. And I think that as more of this starts to occur, we're making the buys smarter. We're making our clients happier by having that data-driven approach and getting to the people who are in the market for whatever the product is, whether it's goods or services.
What do you see for the near to medium future for this convergence, leveraging data across TV and digital channels?
Yeah, I think it's going to start to change the metrics under which campaigns are being bought and sold on. We're seeing some of this with secondary guarantees that some clients are asking for, especially ones who own a data agency or a data asset. They want to know, not just how many GRPs were we able to put out into the marketplace. They're also starting to ask questions of how do we get that, how do we know how many impressions were served for people in the market for, say, golf clubs or a car or whatever it is, right? So that secondary guarantee, I think, is playing into things a bit. You know, it also plays in, I think, a bit further into some of the measurement that can be done after a campaign is run. So
Should we be looking at reach and frequency any differently?
yeah, I think that, you know, reach and frequency, for the longest time, you know, reach and frequency was one of those things where everyone was out there banging the drum about, we need to reach more people and we need to hit them in all these different platforms,
They
right?
still do.
They still do, and it's important. I get it. But I think frequency plays a big role in that too. If I see an ad one time, I'm not going to be, compelled to buy it. Nobody really kind of thinks that way, right? It's a matter of kind of getting the right reach and the right frequency, regardless of where those eyeballs are. So I think that reach frequency is going to start to become another metric too. That some advertisers are coming along and they're saying, all right, I want to pay for X amount of impressions against Y amount of eyeballs, and anything that spills over is not something that I'm in the gonna give a lot of money towards.
Now, I'm always amazed when I hear people talk about targeting and then they want to go spray it and throw as much spaghetti on the wrong wall just because they think
Yep.
there's more to put out there. That's a horrible analogy, but that's something
No,
we run into all the time.
that spray and pray, mindset is. I get where it's coming from, and I understand, how the math works on that, because, the way that they see it is they're offsetting the cost of getting to those households who are truly in the market for something with kind of planting that seed down the road for someone who may be in the market for it, right? So, I'm in the market for a car, and then 3 years from now, I'm not going to be in the market for a car. But if I'm not in the market for a car, and you're planting that seed for when I am back in the market, I get that concept of, like, you're kind of you're building it, you're building a base, and then you want to kind of go from there and grow it. I just think that reach play of just blast it out and see what sticks is good for laying a base, but it's not good for trying to drive the lower end conversion metrics.
Well, and if you're actually on the performance side, you got to understand that if you're throwing a bunch of seeds to stay there and you throw them
Yep.
out into the desert because there's more space.
Yep.
If you're not measuring what that tree looks like in 3 years or 10 years or whatever the tail of your advertising is, you may end up with a tiny cactus or a succulent as opposed to a big willow tree, or something like that. And that's just unfortunately where a lot of folks are with their views on whether or not their ads even work.
Absolutely. And that's why I think that the data-driven approach has to play a big role in how you spend some of those ad dollars, right? So, you want to kind of lay a base, but then on top of that, you want to get those targeted ads in there. And that's where the data kind of comes in and plays a role, not only just for, hey, let's get a message out to the right people, but then, hey, what happened with that campaign? Did that campaign sell more cars? Did that campaign drive more traffic to your store? Did it get you to get more people calling up and buying products, right? And then from there, you do an analysis and it leads back into that targeting. So you end up with that life cycle of an ad kind of being important for how you approach your next campaign. And that's something that I see as being, paramount for the advertisers on the other side. They need to kind of get the right ads, even creative, into the right hands at the right time, and then analyze it, and then go back and do it all over again.
The moral of the story is don't throw tree seeds in the desert. So, well, Andre, I asked this of all my guests. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Favorite kind of shark?
Tapping on those French roots, I'll say, what is your favorite kind of tiburon?
I actually got that. I think we've talked about this. I actually got to swim with sharks on my honeymoon. So I'm going to say the lemon shark, because I actually got to touch one of those guys up close and personal. So
awesome. Well, Andre, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
Absolutely.
All right. Number one, OTT or CTV?
It's OTT to me.
Why so?
It's just over the top television, so it's not a set top box, but a dongle that hangs off the back.
All right. Number two, with that French heritage, let's talk a little Roux.
Oh, Canadian action.
Canadian French. That's okay. Would you rather have traditional French food or Cajun food?
Cajun food. I'm all about the spice.
There you go. All right. Number three, you're watching a show that was on yesterday. Would you rather watch it on your set top box or through a streaming service?
Set top box all the way. To me, that box on the wall is the big kind of in your face production that you want to see. And I found that on demand is never my cup of tea.
The
We can
functionality
edit
is not
that.
there yet. So
Well, that's the thing, right? So conceptually being able to kind of pick up the remote control and just watch something as opposed to like flipping through 57 menus just to find the program that I'm trying to watch. And then from there, not being able to fast forward if I've already seen like a portion of it. So it's relevant because the other day we were watching something and my DVR crapped out on the recording. So I had to go and watch it on demand. And in doing so, I couldn't fast forward, so I had to like watch the whole show again, which was not.
yeah. Number four, knowing that you are Andre the TV giant, I'm going to ask you a wrestling question here. Who wins in a real fight, The Rock or John Cena?
Oh, The Rock, definitely The Rock.
You are supposed to say John Cena because he's using Experian data and he appears on the Experian TV commercials.
Yes, but I can't tell the company line on that one. The Rock is
Yeah,
a-
Black
is a
Adam's
big
going to
boy.
win that one all day long. So, all right, number five, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread. Oh, can't go wrong with cornbread,
Okay.
especially with some barbecue. Oh,
Oh,
little
yeah.
pulled pork and some
Amen.
cornbread. Oh yeah.
Just had it not last weekend, but the weekend before. So, Andre, where can people find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing in the industry and more?
You got me on LinkedIn, and if anyone wants to reach out, you can hit me at andre.roux@experian.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you.
So there was my conversation with Andre Roux, a data sales executive at Experian who has an extensive background in the TV industry, working in data, operations, analytics, and sales for companies like Experian, NBCU, DIRECTV, Turner, and ABC Disney. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, love when he said that data-driven TV is starting to get its mojo on. It was in its infancy and now it's really coming of age. Dating back to my first episode of this show even, it was almost all evangelizing. Now we're talking about it and taking it to the next level, and that's a great thing. More people are starting to think about and realize that you can go across devices a lot more. But remember, it's also important that there is still so much more to be done. And just looking at TV like you would measure other digital channels isn't the only answer. Be curious about what is capable. Second, connected TV is the future. It's got all the momentum. But do not forget some of the more traditional TV advertising that still rules. Broadcast TV is still a major player. Not everyone is watching everything streamed. As he said, though, each medium is starting to find its own right size. Where you can help brands is to really understand this whole landscape and help them see the full scope of TV advertising, and not just what you can push only to a device or a streaming-only service. Point is, it's not just putting the ad on the hottest flavored medium. You've got to simply focus on getting the ads in front of people the right way and letting the data drive that buying decision. Go beyond just what you've heard. Be fearless in your targeting and advertising. Third, measurement is so key here. It was important when I worked with Andre previously to measure in a certain way. Going beyond traditional Nielsen is something that many of us did years ago. But that currency of measurement, roll them all, as he said. And sometimes now with the changes, it feels like Bitcoin that isn't mapped to any gold standard, if you know what I mean. You can go deeper in measurement. Andre and I have for years. Go much deeper than panel-based measurement or reach frequency stats. Dive deeper with the data to build your campaigns and lay that as a base of your TV measurement based on what you buy or sold. Tying this part of the journey back to sales makes CMOs and CFOs happy. So dive deeper. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I'm so thankful to everyone who listens. Please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show. And yes, I too think that The Rock beats John Cena. Black Adam versus Peacemaker? I mean, come on. But we'll have to discuss that further when you join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.